okay, let's assume you have a claim with, then you have a pretty high deductible. It's like, many drivers just, live paycheck to paycheck and paying, out of pocket $2,500 is
Yeah.
something that can be really, really significant for you. Sometimes you're, until you find the money, you can't work
Right.
because you can't fix the car. So another thing that we do is that we provide some kind of deductible gap coverage. So like if you had a claim during rideshare,
Yeah.
you will pay $2,500
Mm.
deductible to Uber or Lyft, but we will reimburse you for the difference, for the $2,000.
Tomer Kashi is a tech geek turned insurance innovator. At the age of 15, he began his Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. Later, he joined the elite Talpiot program by the Israeli Air Force, a training program that combines MIT-level technical education with West Point caliber leadership development. After spending a decade in cybersecurity, research and development leadership roles, Tomer decided to start his own venture. He founded a drone safety analytics platform called Skywatch, which quickly became the largest drone insurer in North America. Building on this success, he expanded to create Voom, an insurtech company dedicated to providing smart insurance solutions for the future of mobility. I actually met Tomer a few years ago now at InsurTech, a conference about, you guessed it, insurance and technology in New York City. And I was a big fan of the product, the company. He told me all about the rideshare insurance products they were going to be launching. And here we are a few years later, and the company has been expanding and doing really well. And I actually agreed to come on as an advisor for the company. So as you can imagine, I'm definitely a big fan of this product, the team, Tomer himself, and I think that they're doing a lot of cool things to help rideshare drivers and move the rideshare industry and insurance forward. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Tomer, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know you're in Israel. I'm here in Los Angeles, and so there's always a little bit of scheduling back and forth, but I'm glad we could make it happen, and I'm excited to chat with you and get into the story of Voom.
The feeling is mutual. Let's dive into it.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start off, for those who may not be watching on video, you've got a nice shirt there with a nice logo. I don't think I have that shirt yet, so you might have to send me one, but I like the logo. So talk to me a little bit. First, what does the name Voom mean and what does the company do?
That's an interesting part. I think you're the first one asking me about, the name origin. So basically, Voom, in a nutshell, we're an insure tech company. We're tech guys
Hmm.
doing insurance and specialize in creating usage-based smart insurance products for the future of mobility. We already have several products in the market. We're the large commercial drone insurer, and we're
Oh,
doing
wow.
insurance for motorcycles in a connected manner. And now we recently launched this, rideshare insurance product that I'm personally really excited about. That's our newest product, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from drivers. And that's, what I'm here to speak about today. Actually, the story of Voom, like the name Voom, one, it's short.
Yeah.
Two, it resembles move because we insure everything that moves.
Okay.
And they like two O's in the middle. Looks like
Yeah.
wheels.
It's funny. I didn't even tell you I was going to ask you that question, right? I just thought of it when I was talking to you. I was like, I like the name. It's catchy. And for some reason, yeah, it did make me think maybe the move because it's sort of Voom backwards, but it did make me think like, things happening, things moving, right? And it was very subconscious though. So I like the name, but it is, I know every founder always spends, I don't know, a lot of time think about what they should call the company, right?
We we had some alternative names, but I think this is by far the best one.
Yeah. So you talked about you're in drone insurance. That's pretty interesting. Motorcycle insurance. What led you to get into the rideshare space?
So, for a while we already, were insuring, like different niche, mobility segments, and we were doing it in a pretty effective manner. We had like tens of thousands of customers, and we're growing quite quickly. And most of the things that we do is to look at data that other, incumbent insurance
Hmm.
are like, I would say, like blind to, just, don't look at
Yeah.
because either they can't or they don't care. And hence, like the end insurance product is like, I would say, like less fair for the customer.
Hmm.
One day I took a flight to Austin. I ordered an Uber, and, the driver came with a brand new Tesla.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was, kind of, what a nice car, that's amazing to take
Hmm.
a ride with that. They asked, why are you driving, for Uber on a Tesla? And he said, the number one cost that I have is gas. I
Hmm.
have free electricity charging. So I bought a Tesla to drive for Uber. I have another car for my, day-to-day job.
Yeah.
But I'm using a Tesla, and I'm using it only to drive customers, to
Mm.
drive others around. And they asked also, so how much you pay for insurance? And this driver was paying $3,200, $200 a year,
Wow.
which is like amazing. It was insured with, I think, Allstate. So, but that's like a lot.
Yeah.
And this driver, 90% of the time, the car is utilized for, driving passengers.
Yeah.
And when you're driving for Uber and Lyft, you're already covered by the platform itself.
Right.
The actual exposure for, in this case, Allstate was like nothing. You're covering the car,
Interesting.
on the garage. Maybe, when it goes to wash the car or doing like a small personal errand, going to the grocery shop. So obviously this driver is overpaying a lot for his business. And I thought to myself, why can't we, look more about like the specific driving habits of this driver, meaning how much you're driving for your personal use and how much you're driving for others where you're already covered, and maybe we can come up with a better rate.
Yeah, I really like that story because I think that it highlights the fact that, right, with rideshare drivers are sort of fit into this old system, of insurance, like you mentioned, right? Hey, he's paying $3,200 a year, and he may be doing, especially if he has another car, it may be very, very minimal miles. Even if I am a rideshare driver, if I'm doing, 1,000 to 2,000 miles a week on Uber and Lyft every week, like I probably don't want to do a lot of personal driving. I probably on my days off, I want to not drive, right? So it's like all of the incentives and behavior would actually even push in the other direction. So it's sort of like one of these situations where they're paying a bunch and, not really getting much out of it. So I like that. And, for a lot of drivers too, we talk about, some of the products and features. I could even say in this situation, this driver, if you're really trying to reduce your personal miles, you can use the Uber and Lyft destination filter, right? Because then technically you're in period 2, right? Which would be you're waiting for a request, you're driving to, you might be driving to home or work. And I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a loophole, but, there are lots of ways that you can kind of almost like get very close to 100% of rideshare miles.
So, Harry, as you said, these drivers in many cases they don't commute to work because driving is their work. They don't want to go to trips over the weekend. So, in many cases, it's not always, but in many cases, you just deserve a better and more adequate rate.
Yeah. So, is your sort of unique angle with Voom, is it the usage-based insurance? So kind of like you mentioned, you're basically only going to pay for the miles that you're driving?
Yes, but not only. So after, talking with this driver, we did do like this extra work of talking with potentially like hundreds of other drivers to get feedback. And one of the things that really repeated itself time and time again is, what happened when you have a claim on Uber. So one of the things that I think is very crucial to stress is, okay, let's assume you have a claim then you have a pretty high deductible. It's like $2,500 deductible that you need to pay in cover for the claim. In many cases, many drivers just, live paycheck to paycheck and paying, out of pocket $2,500 is something that can be really, really significant for you. Sometimes you're, until you find the money, you can't work because you can't fix the car. So another thing that we do is that we provide some kind of deductible gap coverage. So let's say your deductible on your Voom insurance policy is, let's say, $500. Then if you had a claim during rideshare, you will pay $2,500 deductible to Uber or Lyft, but we will reimburse you for the difference, for the $2,000.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that is actually really valuable because I think a lot of people, right, to drive for Uber and Lyft, you only need personal insurance, right? The companies only require you to have regular personal insurance, just like everyone else. And, I think most people's deductibles are more in the $500 to $1,000 range for their personal insurance. And so, there's a lot of things to worry about when you first sign up to drive with Uber and Lyft. Looking at the fine print of the insurance deductible is probably not at the top of your list. And I feel like so many times we hear from drivers that are like, they get into an accident and both Uber and Lyft have that $2,500 deductible and they say, oh crap, I don't have anywhere close to that amount. So I think being able to buy down that deductible with a product that Voom has is really, really valuable.
The problem is that many drivers just, don't know about it because they don't read the small letters. And then, they realize it just, when it's too late.
And I think in my experience, I've seen that, the $2,500 deductible, whether you're at fault or not, you kind of are responsible for that money up front, right? Like if you're not at fault, you might get that money back later or half of it later, but you have to float the 2,500. So it's a big, amount.
Yes. So if I just want to, summarize everything into one sentence, so
Mhm.
Voom created an insurance policy that replaces your,
Yeah.
normal, personal policy. And the policy is kind of hybrid. We cover you for all of your personal stuff and for some of the gaps that you have, either when you have passengers in the car, what's called period 2 and period 3, we cover the deductible, or when the app is open but you don't have a passenger, what's called period 1. So somehow we did this magic in which you can not only pay less but also get more.
Yeah.
Two things that usually don't go together.
Very cool. And I guess maybe we can give a quick sort of background. How does Uber and Lyft's insurance work? I know you and I have both mentioned period 1, 2, 3. Maybe you can give a kind of a high level or maybe a detail of how the insurance works, like with a product like Voom, and then when they're covered by Uber and Lyft. And I'm happy to jump in too, but for those who may not be, experts on the insurance side.
Sure. Okay, so let's unpack that because I would say, like, it sounds complex on the first glance, but when you dive into that, I think it's kind of clear. So there are 4 periods of driving. First one, period 0, is your normal driving, completely personal, and that's what Voom covers and any other personal. Then there is period 1 when the app is open, but you're not in an active trip. This is an area where the platform covers to some extent, let's say, only the liability, and then Voom covers any gap that you have. So let's say you have a comprehensive or collision cover, Voom will cover that. Then there are periods 2 and 3, being on an active ride, either on a way to a passenger or with a passenger in the car. These periods are fully covered by the RideShare platforms, by Uber and Lyft and others, besides the fact that, that we mentioned this high deductible. So again, if you have an extra during this period, platform will pay, but Voom will help you to cover for the deductible gap if you, purchase this coverage.
Got it. Very helpful. So, now that we kind of have that background, we've talked about Voom's product and kind of what makes it compelling to drivers. I think one thing that stood out to me is that you guys are expanding quite rapidly. I feel like I get updates from your team, not every week, but every couple of weeks that you're launching in a new state. So talk to me a little bit about where you're operating and what is the process like of launching in these new states?
So insurance is an exciting industry in which you need to approve your product with the state regulators in each and every state. So for every Department of Insurance, you hand them a book of a PDF of thousands of pages.
Well, is it a PDF or is it a stack of papers?
Today it's a PDF.
Okay,
I'm sure that until recently it was a stack of papers. I don't know, maybe they printed. So, and in this book, you show everything that that all of the rates and all of the forms. You're not discriminatory. A lot of important things. Our goal is to be within 50 states, in a year or two. Today we're already in 7 states. We are now live in Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Tennessee, Georgia, Minnesota, and Maryland. And many more states are in the process. I think that the best thing to do is to go to the Voom Insurance website, try to get a quote. If we're yet live in your state, then you're automatically in our mailing list. So once we're live in your state, you will get an email from us.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll leave a link to that in the show notes. But what is the website for people who can't wait till the end of this podcast and got to go look now?
Go to voominsurance.com. Click on RideShare Insurance and you're there.
Perfect. So is there anything else you want to talk about on the product side, or is it kind of everything that you've mentioned? Go to the website, you get a quote. What are some of the factors that you look at how is it priced? Maybe I don't think we've talked quite about how it's priced other than the pay per mile part.
Yeah. So let's talk about the onboarding process. Let's say you're a new customer and you wanna get a quote. So very similar to other insurance companies, we look at your age and car and your driving record and so on and so forth. One of the things that we ask you is, how much do you plan to drive? Personal use and for commercial use. Our policy is not per mile per se, but we do use mileage as a very important factor in how we rate.
Gotcha.
One thing that we do in addition is that we ask you to synchronize your Uber or Lyft or both accounts with Voom. We get a read-only access to this account, And together with this data, we also ask you to take an odometer picture, a picture of your odometer in the car, in the inception of the policy, and then later on after a few months. This way, we're able to validate that your mileage assumption is accurate, meaning we take like the overall mileage that the car has done. We know from Uber and Lyft how much you drove for the commercial purposes, and we're able to deduct this mileage from your overall mileage of the car. And this way we derive the personal mileage that you're doing. We just want to make sure that indeed you're not driving a lot for personal use, and hence you're eligible for this lower rate.
Got it. What would you say are the best types of drivers or customers for Voom? I'm guessing that a lot of people, when they, select insurance, are they looking at, hey, is this cheaper than my current policy? Or are people more concerned with the deductible and kind of filling the gaps? Or is it all of the above? I guess I'm just kind of curious, like, who do you, are there certain drivers like, oh, this is a slam dunk, and others maybe, oh, this isn't as good of a fit? What do you think about like the customer profile? Who should be coming and looking to Voom?
So when we created this product initially, we had in mind like only the professional drivers that are driving 90% of the time, and hence the personal mileage is very, very low. And yes, we have many of these drivers. But then we actually found like many other drivers that found the Voom policy very attractive for them. For example, one is a bus driver. Okay, so he's driving his bus most of the time. He's not driving his personal car to work. And then, from time to time, he's doing Uber. So this guy, for example, another one is a student. So he's a student, he's doing RideShare, but he's not using the car. Actually, she is not using the car a lot besides that. So there are many, many use cases, but generally speaking, the less you're using your car for personal driving, the more attractive the Voom policy is going to be for you.
Got it. Very cool. Yeah. And I know we had one of my contributors, Paula, she got a quote with Voom in Minnesota. And I think she actually has State Farm, and, with the rideshare policy from Voom, it was actually, I think she told me it was $15 a month cheaper to get a Voom policy than her current State Farm. So I guess what's your experience been like, with customers getting quotes? I think this is one thing I've always told drivers is that a lot of times people don't like to shop around for insurance, right? So it's been so long maybe that Paula got a quote for insurance, like, rates change, or, maybe they've been kind of steadily creeping up. It's kind of cool that, she got a better policy, more coverage, with like the rideshare piece, and it's actually cheaper than her personal insurance, right?
So rates are generally going up, I think, like countrywide and, from all of the insurance companies, mainly because of inflation and labor costs. Also, sometimes because of, litigation. But drivers, even if they have clean records, they are seeing their, rates just go up. And I think generally speaking, regardless of Voom, it is important, let's say, once in 2 or 3 years, to check your rates versus other companies. There's actually one of our customers just like posted on Facebook a few days ago. She was with Progressive. She was paying $161 per month. Renewal quote was raised to $368.
Wow.
And then she went to Voom and got the same for $67 per month.
Yeah, very cool.
So it's like, it's like 30% of what she, and I'm sure that it's not the same for everybody. Like every driver has their own case. But, these
I think you mentioned an interesting thing, right? The general insurance market on the personal side. I think, obviously a lot of folks have been complaining and feeling inflation over the past year or two in the United States, and I think around the world. But I think insurance I've seen as one of the categories that has been way above average. I think I saw in a recent article you shared on your LinkedIn, I think we were also quoted in it on Insurify. I think they said 23% increase over the past year in insurance costs, maybe another 7% last year. And, I think for drivers, inflation has been a really tough one because obviously rideshare drivers are responsible for all of their expenses, and all of the things that have, sort of soared beyond average, gas, insurance, vehicle costs, like these are all the highest, items on the inflation side. So I don't know, is there any observations you've seen on the, like, why is the personal insurance market, kind of going up so much in your eyes, and how does that affect Voom?
One of the things that's happening in the market in general is that the insurance market is kind of like lagging behind in raising rates. So
Mhm.
actually, like they're raising the rates that they should have raised like 3 years ago, but
Mhm.
everything takes time. So now people are paying for the inflation of like several years in a row. So I think that in 2021, 2022, the losses of personal lines insurance companies were kind of high.
Yeah.
And since then, raised the rates significantly. And now people are feeling it, although inflation was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Um,
Got it.
and in this, out of this, overall context, Voom, our rates are not cheaper for all. The only
Mhm.
way that we're able to be cheaper for some is that we're looking at things that others just, don't look at, because, they're very, very good at,
Yeah.
you know, seeing things as an average.
Mhm.
And we think that there are many smart people in all of these, huge insurance companies. They have a lot of data. But, Newton once said, the only reason I saw further than others is because I was standing on the shoulders of giants.
Mhm.
So we're using the expertise of, everybody else in the industry, but
Yeah.
we just do the extra mile. We look at, your Uber and Lyft data in order to provide a fair insurance solution for you.
Got it. I mean, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I'm guessing you want some of the best, some of the safest drivers, right, that are out there. I mean, I think this is one thing that rideshare drivers have a bit of a issue with, or maybe a bone to pick with the companies. If I'm one of the safest drivers, I'm not rewarded really at all as an Uber driver, right? Like I'm literally, there I'm assuming some drivers are much worse than others on the Uber platform, yet we're paid the same. I don't think I've seen anything or heard anything where Uber is paying safer drivers more than others. But I mean, really, they probably should be, right? What do you think about sort of attracting and, what even makes a safe rideshare driver in your mind? Because I'm guessing you like them and want them, right?
I like them and want them. I think that, yeah, to my knowledge, and unfortunately, Uber and Lyft do not reward safe driving. However, they can punish bad driving.
Hmm.
So if you're driving, let's say, you're driving, really crazy, and you get like bad feedback from a passenger, this is
Yeah,
something that
a
can
lower
be
rating.
problematic.
Yeah.
So I do think that, they sometimes take, the worst, 10%, 20% and offboard them from the platform.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah, I would imagine that there's definitely some, there's some pretty smart people at Uber and Lyft, and I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to realize that, hey, we have plenty of drivers right now, maybe the bottom 1%, these guys keep getting into accidents. Let's, and their rating is also low. Let's knock them off. I think I've heard, I don't know if it's a rumor or maybe even confirmed that, Lyft actually will send out trips to the safest, if two drivers are right next to each other, they'll send it to the driver with a safer driving, internal score. But I feel like right now, a lot of what they're doing is more of a black box and less and completely nothing public facing, right? They're never telling drivers that, hey, we're giving you better trips because you're safer. But I feel like they should. I feel like if I knew I was getting paid more or getting more trips or better trips, kind of close that positive feedback loop, I would. What do you think about the sort of, I guess, safety level and, kind of like what could the companies, the rideshare companies be doing to encourage safer driving?
I think that there is, much that they can do, right? As you
Hmm.
said, these companies are paying huge amount of money for insurance. That's like,
Yeah.
a large cost basically goes to the passenger. It's like a part of the trip cost,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, one driver is much more risky than the other, but as a passenger, I would pay the same, right?
Yeah.
And although like the like cost insurance cost for Uber would be or Lyft would be different.
Right.
So they would have incentivized the drivers just by, okay, you will get more money for this trip because we're paying less insurance for
Hmm.
you, good driver. By definition, over time, only good drivers will be there on the platform.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think what's your thought on the general kind of commercial insurance market for these platforms like Uber and Lyft? I think you mentioned, right, they're spending a lot. I think Dara, I did an investor call recently, people are asking about insurance. Dara mentioned it on a recent earnings call. I think he blamed, maybe some of the legal costs, they're being sued a lot and, just that insurance costs are up across the board. Like, how do you think about this market, these high costs that Uber and Lyft are paying for insurance? And does that affect you at all, or is that a good or bad thing? What would you like to see, in kind of context of Voom?
I think that first of all, like the type of insurance that Uber and Lyft has to provide is
Hmm.
a bit like different than just like the kind of insurance that Voom has to provide. So Voom covers, it's kind of like a hybrid policy, covers
Yeah.
like the personal usage and some of the commercial, but a typical claim on Uber would involve like passenger,
Right.
and these tend to be like more complicated.
Mm.
Also, the limits themselves might be higher in these
Yeah.
cases. So the type of claims and type of litigation, and the passenger sometimes sues the driver. These are things that creates a lot of complexities, and by definition raises the prices even more.
Hmm.
Just like when you have an insurance for a taxi, it would cost much more than insurance for a personal car.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess what are your thoughts on kind of like, would you be open to partnering with Uber and Lyft in the future? Do you think that every rideshare driver should have some sort of, I mean, like I mentioned, right now they can get in with a personal policy. I guess like my personal opinion, I feel like they should all have, rideshare insurance. Seems like it would benefit them with that deductible gap and then, kind of like covering, other things. And of course, if it's cheaper too, right?
Yeah, I think that for many drivers, it's just like it makes it like much easier to
Hmm.
be a driver for a long time, okay? Because
Yeah.
a driver doesn't looks only at what they're making from their trip, but also looking at the expenses line. One is gas, the number two is probably insurance,
Yeah.
and if there is a way, and we think that Voom is a way to
Hmm.
save significant cost, and also, if something happens, God forbid, also to have
Yeah.
a lower deductible, that's something that will just allow you to be a driver for a long time on
Yeah.
better terms. Hence, I think that there is an incentive, for the rideshare platforms in general to at least to make their drivers aware that
Yeah.
such a solution. And I think that a platform like the RideShare Guy, that many drivers are just like uneducated about insurance in
Hmm.
general, and it's very important that there are platforms like the RideShare Guy that really take the time and dive
Yeah.
into this topic with the focus on Voom, or not only. I saw the other content you have on your website
Hmm.
with regards to that. I think it's very, very important, and the drivers will know as much as they can about this topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always a big fan of any product that is solving the problems our audience is having, because then, I mean, it's not a great feeling, when people come to me and say, "Oh, I've gotten in an accident, I have this high deductible. What should I do?" And I mean, really, there's not a lot you can do. So I think that's one of my favorite parts about this product, is that you've got that deductible buy down, and hopefully too, like you said, maybe not everyone, the prices are going to be cheaper, but I think we're seeing from a lot of folks that there are a lot of situations where they can actually save money. So now, they're kind of reducing that expense line, and, drivers are making less over the past couple of years because there's so many drivers out there. So I think, and expenses are going up, right? So if you're making less and expenses are going up, you really have to look at, there's only so much you can do on the income side. You got to look at ways to reduce those expenses also. So I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing at Voom, and appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to mention to the audience? Any other wisdom or nuggets of wisdom that you want to leave them with when it comes to insurance? And of course, let us know where we can find more about Voom and get a quote.
I think, and thank you for asking that. I think that again, for me, like the number one goal is that drivers will be educated
Hmm.
about, what it means to have insurance when you're a rideshare driver. I just noticed, a survey in which like more than a quarter of the drivers are hiding from their
Yeah.
insurance company that they are doing rideshare, because they know that, if they are going to tell the insurance company they're doing
Yeah.
rideshare, either they're going to be denied or they're going to pay more. So it's very important for drivers to be educated about this topic, know what
Yeah.
it means. Check out Voom, but also check the other options that you have. One of the things that I will also mention is that on our website there are some good resources. We talked about like the different periods of drivers. We talked
Yeah.
about different platforms and what kind of insurance they offer. We have on our blog, on our website, a few resources. I think that you reviewed
Cool.
one of these blog posts.
Yeah. You guys have a nice chart of the different periods, because I know we talked about it, but it's a little confusing the first time you hear it. So I think a visual aid might help a bit.
And the last thing I would say, mention my name, if you call our call center or write us a note, just say that, that you heard me on the RideShare Guy podcast. And, I'll make sure that, personally you're taken care of in the best way possible.
All right. Wow. Look at that. VIP service. So not only, I guess I like that you dropped that at the end. So we made people listen and watch all the way to the end to get the VIP treatment from Tomer at Voom. So appreciate you coming on. We will leave a link to VoomInsurance.com and where people can get a quote for the rideshare insurance product, live in 7 states right now and lots more coming. Let me see if I can recite them all. Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Georgia, Tennessee, Maryland. Oh, I think there's one more. What'd I miss? Minnesota. Oh, perfect. Of course. I even mentioned Paula in Minnesota and I forgot that one. But thank you very much, Tomer, and talk more in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching today's episode of the RideShare Guy podcast. For more information on today's guest, please check the description. Now, you don't want to miss this interview of the RideShare Guy podcast, so click here and also make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any future ones. See you next time.